Hello everyone and welcome back to Killer Shrew Fans Killer Toy Reviews. Now if you're no stranger to my channel, then you know I absolutely love Carnotaurus. It's my all-time favorite dinosaur, and that love comes from a variety of places. A big part of it is nostalgia for Disney's Dinosaur. I watched that movie probably more than I watched Jurassic Park as a youngin'. But I think another part of it is what an underdog the dinosaur is. It's been featured in all sorts of media since its discovery, but it's never been able to break into the mainstream like T-Rex, or Triceratops, or even Spinosaurus. Still, it continues to exist as its own unique dinosaur on the fringes of popularity and notoriety. And I think it's that sort of scrappy, outsider nature that draws me to the animal. And it's just weirdly cool, man. Yet despite my love for the animal and desire to add as many decent looking models of it as I can to my collection, one that never really interested me was REBOR's Crimson King. For whatever reason, when I first broke into collecting, this model never stood out to me as a must-have, and I only recently added it to my collection when a friend was looking to downsize and sold it to me for a decent price. But with REBOR's recent release of the Carnotaurus Skull Oddity and their upcoming Crimson King Requiem on the horizon, seriously, that needs to hurry up and get here. I thought now was as good a time as ever to put together a review of their original Carnotaurus and find out why this one doesn't cut it in the bull ring. So here we go, it's Killer Shrew Fans Killer Toy Reviews, and today we're taking a look at REBOR's Crimson King. Let's do this! First off, the packaging. I don't care if you love them or hate them, there's something that is so satisfying about REBOR's packaging. I love the black sleeve with the skeletal diagram. It's so simple, yet so eye-catching and sleek. And honestly, looking at the diagram and the silhouette there, you get the impression that REBOR is really onto something with this figure. It really advertises a promising model within, if only the model was as attractive as the packaging it came in. You can see in the bottom right corner you've got the REBOR logo, and the top left features the title of the species and its code name, if you will, as well as the 1/35th scale indicator. The back of the box features a catalog of other REBOR figures that had been released up to this point, all in those lovely skeletal diagrams. I actually have none of these at the moment, and I've been on quite the REBOR kick as of late, so if anyone out there could point me in the direction of any of these older figures, that would be greatly appreciated. As always within the box, REBOR has included an informational card containing all sorts of facts and figures about the animal in question. The back of the card is kind of fun. It shows a shattered copy of Crimson King with the encouraging note, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." I believe this had something to do with the paint test or original cast arriving to REBOR absolutely destroyed. But they rebuilt it. They have the technology. Crimson King does come with a base, something REBOR has started to do less and less of, which is a shame, but the base here is quite lovely. The volcanic nature is beautifully captured here with the cracking black stones and the underlying colors of lava. I love how it reflects the light, really gives the sculpted rocks an obsidian feel, which is fantastic. On the bottom, you have got the same diagram from the box, which is nice, really makes it feel official. Unlike the bases of, say, P&SO, REBOR's bases, for the most part, do not have pegs or feature imprints to guide your model into place. Crimson just stands atop the flat surface. On one hand, there's nothing to root him down and keep him from falling, but on the other hand, it does mean he has to be able to balance without a base, which he does, so standing on the base is no big feat for him. But anyway, there is our Crimson King standing in all of his royal glory. To me, this is a model that works only from certain angles. As I'm watching him on the turntable, there are certain moments where I think, oh, that is a beautiful rendition of Carnotaurus. But there are also moments where that goes away. I can't put my finger on why that is, why one angle works while another doesn't, but it's just something I feel as I look at him in a 360-degree setting. I suppose that means if you display him a certain way, he should be appealing to the eye, but personally, I like to be able to display my dinosaurs any which way I please. If we take a look at the finer detail, you can see there is plenty to go around. It is REBOR, but it also suffers from those usual REBOR pitfalls in that there's so much detail that it just comes across as stale, sculpted, and inorganic. One thing that should be celebrated on this model is that REBOR gave this Carnotaurus lips, which is certainly unexpected from a company that was largely awesome bro in its early years and less scientific. The jaw is articulated, and although it does not open super wide, it does open to reveal some interesting colors. These shades of purple aren't something you typically see in the mouth of dinosaur models. Usually it's some fleshy tones, but I want to commend REBOR here for daring to be different. It feels like the mouth of a polar bear, which is fitting because that is a predator. The application isn't great. It does really feel like it's colored on, but oh well. The teeth are individually sculpted, and since this was before REBOR started to do that clear plastic for their teeth that I love so much, they are simply painted. In profile, the head could almost work, but then REBOR butchered it with terrible paint. First off, there's a lot of shrink wrapping going on the skull, which is highlighted by paint that has been applied in those cavities. Most insultingly is all of that black around the eyes. Sure, it makes the golden eye stand out, but it's just so unnatural. Since the eyes are so recessed and surrounded by that black, it looks like someone wearing a Carnotaurus mask, or like all of the flesh in that area has rotted away to reveal these holes in the face. It's distracting, unappealing, and not at all realistic. Enough said. From a head-on view, the skull feels too bulky and too wide. Carnotaurus had a very deep skull, but it wasn't all that wide in comparison, so that's another detraction from this model. Moving down the length of the body, yeah, there's a ton of detail here. Circular raised scales, osteoderm, spikes, folds of skin, the whole enchilada. But it's the same issue with the head in that it feels very inorganic because it is so pronounced and plentiful. It reads better from a distance given the quantity, but it goes back to being able to enjoy this dinosaur from any angle or distance for me, and you really can't, and that's a problem. From a dorsal view, you can see this Carnotaurus has a very undulating shape to it. It's very wavy from snout to tail. In reality, Carnotaurus was basically a torpedo, or a muscular sausage, if you will. Its tail was a massive, stiff muscle. It wasn't built to snake like that. You could make an argument it's all done for balance, and if that is the case, then so be it, I guess. Here's also a decent view of the sort of ridged spike details along the back so you can see what it looks like from the top. The underbelly features plenty of detail as well, good musculature in the pecs, and then down there you have got the REBOR copyright info on the foot. Honestly, with everything else going on with this figure, I'm just numb to it at this point. There's no balance to it, it's just throwing as much as it can at you and hoping it makes an impression. And it certainly has, I just don't know if it's the right one. The arms of this Carno are appropriately small, but they could stand to be smaller if you ask me. I don't know, maybe going any smaller would have made it difficult for molding or casting. The fingers do have painted claws, that's another no-no, they should really just be useless nubs. But the real humdinger of these arms is that they offer another point of articulation. They can rotate forward and backwards. On one hand, this means you can push them up to the proper positioning, but on the other hand, the articulation collapses into unintentional hilarity when they are rotated forward. They're so stubby that they just look ridiculous in any position other than where they're supposed to be. My favorite is going all the way forward into that why though positioning. Why though indeed, REBOR. I mean, the arms could most likely rotate in and out, but to my knowledge they were so stumpy and worthless that they were incapable of swinging forward. At the end of the day, it's a pointless feature that does nothing for the model. The feet actually look pretty good. The nails have that sort of translucent quality that REBOR would take forward into their teeth down the line, and they look pretty lifelike. And the plate scaling on the back of the toes as well as the musculature in the legs looks pretty good. All in all, from a sculptural standpoint, it really does feel as if REBOR took cues from both the actual animal and Disney's iteration of the Carnotaurus to create a hodgepodge of ideas that don't really work. That would be one thing if they were trying to make their version of Disney's Carnotaurus, which we all know now they are capable of doing in a much greater capacity. But the reality is this, as well as many of their early works, was touted as a scientific model to my knowledge, which really isn't the case. Usually, I'm not this picky when it comes to accuracy, but when a model is branded as being accurate when it clearly isn't, then I'll take umbrage. That's why I'm generally more forgiving of Papo, since they don't label themselves as scientific with their dinosaurs, and why I don't lambaste REBOR sculpts that are obviously inspired by film creations. But in this situation, yeah, I think it is warranted. The pose is fine. It's sturdy. I don't like the flexible tail, but beyond that, the craning neck and head are nicely done, so I'll give them credit for that. The paint job, I don't think it's bad per se. It might be a little muddy and doesn't do the best job of highlighting all of that detail, but it really doesn't say crimson to me. You think crimson, you think fiery, warm colors, not dull, earthy tones. So in that regard, it is a bit underwhelming. I'm also not a huge fan of the white dots that are only present on one side for some godforsaken reason. I guess at the end of the day, it is well applied for the most part, but the color choices are just boring and uninspired. Let's get into some measurements, some objective stuff, otherwise we'll be here all day. Crimson King measures in at just under 10 3/4 inches long, or 27 centimeters from tip of tail to tip of snout, and stands in at right around 4 inches off the ground, or around 10 centimeters without the base. I have a ton of comparisons to make, so buckle up, we're about to make a false king tremble in the presence of true kings. First up, the Carnegie Carnotaurus. To me, this is a beautiful representation of the species that has held up fairly well over the years. Even without all the detail of REBOR's, it's more eye-catching and accurate, and stands quite literally above Crimson King. Next up, we have the Nanmu Carnotaurus. This is one that is clearly film-inspired, but even so, it manages to do some things REBOR fails at. The skull is appropriately narrow, it has the massive trunk of a tail, and the detail is much more subtle and organic. On top of that, a much better paint job. Perhaps all REBOR's offering has on Ranger here is balance, which is important, granted. Next up, we have the Safari 2019 Carnotaurus. That was an undeniably divisive model, but even so, I think you know where I am going with this, much more appealing than REBOR's. They're pretty similar in size, but night and day in aesthetics. Now for a blast from the past, here it is with the original Batat Carnotaurus. It amazes me that a model that is about 20 years its senior is more accurate than Crimson King is today. Obviously REBOR's got it beat in terms of detail, but its overall appeal, you just can't beat the classics. And the creme de la creme, the definitive Carno currently out on the market in the eyes of many. Here it is with Collecta's Deluxe Carnotaurus, and yeah, there's no point beating a dead dino, you all get it, Collecta wins. Alright, I'm really starting to feel bad. I've been a total jerk to this model for most of the review. It isn't fair to say it's the worst Carno out there. I think all of Schleich's previous offerings are much more hideous than REBOR's, so here are some figures that REBOR has got beat. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Alright, moving on to some other comparisons. Here it is next to the recent Stegosaurus Garden from REBOR, which is an awesome model. I've actually got all three, they're so nice, but anywho, if you have any of them, hopefully this gives you an idea of the size you can expect from this REBOR Carno. And finally, for comparisons, here it is next to Papo's Iguanodon. This side-by-side is going to have to tide me over until REBOR get their new Carno out on the market. Seriously, hurry up with that! I so want to see a side-by-side with this Papo figure. Come on. But anyway, that is REBOR's Carnotaurus Crimson King. In their defense, Carnotaurus is a bizarre and ugly dinosaur, but this model is bizarre and ugly in a bad way. I have no idea what they were going for with it. Awesome, bro, scientific, somewhere between, but no matter how you slice it, they came up short. It's no mystery that the early works of REBOR were very hit and miss, not to mention their brand and how they presented themselves. Yikes. But even so, I still think this was a particularly ugly duckling, right up there with their Eutyrannus. They have come so far as a company in terms of both sculpting and painting, and I think looking at this Carnotaurus alongside their upcoming offering is enough to prove that. But when it comes to my recommendation of this figure, I think it and many of REBOR's old models are better left in the past, like the dinosaurs that inspired them. Let me know what you think of this model. Do you own it? Are you hoping to track it down? Are you as excited for their upcoming Carnotaurus as I am? Not likely. Drop a comment down below on your way out. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's review, and I hope to see you again for the next one. Take care out there, and bye-bye.